So a koan, it's spelled K-O-A-N, is a question or a riddle that the teacher uses to get the student to realize that which is beyond conceptualization. So the question will be a question that you can't answer with your mind, right? An example is, what is mu is a famous koan. What is mu? M-U, right? Well, you can't answer that with your mind, right? You've never seen a mu, right? And yet that is the question, right? And so the way it works is the question will be given to the student, and then the student will work with the koan and come back to the teacher and give answers to the koan, responses to the koan. And the teacher will work with the student, kind of give them some guidance about it, help motivate them to stay in the process of looking at the koan to realize what the koan is. Another koan is, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Another one is, what is it? Another one is, who am I? That's a koan. Who am I? You can't answer that with just a pat answer. Okay. All of these koans are designed to have you attempt to use the rational mind. Well, it's not even that you attempt to use a rational mind, it's that that's all you have, right? So that's what you do. You start looking at the question with the idea, okay, what is an answer to this question? And you just hit a wall. You keep coming up with the same thing, right? But if you stay with it and you understand the spirit of it, eventually you'll get to a place where you will see it even though you can't say it. And what you will see is non-conceptual. What you will see is beyond language. So the answer to a koan is beyond language, okay? And because it's beyond language, there is no answer, a language answer that is the right answer, okay? So when you answer the koan to the teacher, you're really expressing that you get it somehow. You express that you get it somehow. And the teacher will have a sense of whether the way you're expressing that you get it does indicate that you do get it, like that. But you know, the koans are one approach, right? But the practice of meditation is another approach, and they're both approaching the same thing. Both of them are approaching a non-conceptual reality. And you and me are a non-conceptual reality. So the approach of the non-conceptual reality, right, is one in which one of the ways that you can express that you're aware of the non-conceptual reality, right, is to recognize and be able to express that that you don't exist. The you that you had thought of yourself as doesn't exist. That's at the heart of the matter, because that misunderstanding is the source of all the suffering, right? That's why, you know, when I picked up this magazine today and I saw the lead article, right? No self, no suffering, okay? And this is the why Buddhism is the ultimate self-help is the subtitle, right? Well, you know, they're saying Buddhism is the ultimate self-help, but it's really, the truth is not Buddhist. The truth is not Buddhist. It may be the case that these practices and these truths can be found in the Buddhist practice and the Buddhist teachings, but they're not inherently Buddhist. The truth is just the truth, right? It can be a Christian, you know, Richard Rohr talks about non-duality from a Christian context. So obviously it's not Buddhist, it's not Christian either, right? It's just the truth. And that's what we're involved with here. That's what meditation is about. Meditation is about the truth, right? And meditation is something that is, there's a lot of misunderstandings about it. It's a fad, right? So it's like yoga, right? Yoga's worse in terms of it being a fad. But people do it so they can look like they do it, They do it so they could say that I do it, so I'm cool, right? But that's really not it. That's really not what this is. And even the commercialized version of meditation, which is the mindfulness fad, right? That's nice. It's stress reduction, right? But it really is not representing meditation as what meditation actually is and what meditation is actually meant for. It's meant to be a way that you can wake up. It's meant to be a way that you can sit still, stop acting crazy, stop relating to your mind as if you are your mind, and start practicing being aware of the awareness that is real, that is true, that is you, and recognizing that when you're in the thinking activity, part of what's happening in the thinking activity is it's generating this idea that you are this person, this personality. It's generating that you have a story called your life. It's generating that you have a specific character, that you're certain ways and that you're a physical body and all that stuff. That's all generated in thinking, because in the thinking process is where your conditioning occurred, right? You got conditioned in language, didn't you? Yeah, you went to school, and language was what was being used to condition you, to have you believe things that aren't true and aren't real. Why? Because it's the common understanding that we share, in which gives us the reality that we operate our lives in. That's why. Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with the fact that we go to school and we learn what we learn and we're socialized the way we're socialized. That is an inevitability. That has to happen, right? But it doesn't require that we lose the truth. That's the part of it that, for example, in a culture like the Tibetan culture, right, which was founded on the truth, right? Those people in Tibet, when they grew up, they still learned how to speak the language and to function, in the time-space reality, right? But at the same time, they were learning about the truth. They were learning that this time-space reality is a very temporary situation, right? That is understood a certain way so that we can function, We have to have an understanding that in this reality that we're sharing with one another, you're separate from me. You're over there and I'm over here, right? And we can interact and we can share. And there's a thing called time that's passing, right? And there's a thing called space, and there's a world in which there are things and buildings and countries and all, and the planet and all, that's all the conditioning, right? And that's what we're living in. We're living in that world, right? And when we live in that world, we have to play the role of a human being. We have to play the role of a human being. We have to be a physical body. We have to have a name. We have to have a home. We have to have a telephone number. We have to have all that stuff, right? But the reality of it is, no matter how much stuff you have, no matter how strongly you believe that you are a physical body and that you are this personality, it doesn't change the truth at all, which is that that's simply not true. It's just not true. It's not a problem for you to function in the world as a personality. It's a problem when you think you are that personality. Then you're trapped. You're trapped in the life that you were left to have based on your early life experiences, aren't you? You're trapped in the psychological world that you're living in, and if you were traumatized when you were a kid, now you're trapped, and you have trauma, right? So you have some condition, a mental condition, right, that makes life even harder for you, right? But that's the way it is, right? And even if you're trapped and you're traumatized, if you understand these teachings and you practice these teachings and you really do it with earnest and sincerity. What do I mean by that? See, it's important to be clear with people that you have to be earnest and sincere and committed to this work for this work to work. In other words, this is not a class, this is not an academic class. That's why when I see people taking notes, you're wasting your time. You can remember every word that I'm saying and it won't get you anything, because what I'm talking about is pointing to something that's beyond what I'm saying, right? And your notes aren't going to help. with that, okay? So at some point, your earnest and your sincerity and your commitment has to show itself in your motivation to keep going back and practicing again and again and again, because you know that what you're practicing is true and is real. And if you stay at it, right, eventually it's going to come around and be the reality that you're experiencing. And then there's freedom. That's what they mean by liberation. And then there's freedom. Freedom from what? That's what Muji says when he says, the freedom is not for you, the freedom is from you. From you. Freedom from thinking that you are limited as a physical body. Freedom from thinking that you are a personality, which inherently means you're limited. You're limited to what you've experienced, and that becomes your mental state, your emotional state, and you're living in that state. And that's a limited state. And that state involves a lot of suffering, because as I was talking to you about earlier, you know, until you wake up, until you experience the truth, right? When there is anxiety, it's not that there's anxiety, you're anxious. When there's anger, it's not that anger is happening, you're angry. And when you're angry or when you're anxious, you're stuck. You're stuck. And the reason you're stuck is because you have taken on the belief and you've taken on the understanding that you exist as someone who could be anxious, when in reality there's simply no evidence for that being the case. There's just no evidence. You can look anytime you want. You can look anytime you want at any feeling you're experiencing, whether it's happiness, anger, sadness, frustration, right? Anxiety, fear. And when that's happening, right? If you just look and see, you know, where is this anger? Where is this anxiety? Well, if it's an emotion, the only way you know you're experiencing an emotion is that it is happening in your body as a sensation, right? That's what an emotion is. It's a sensation in the body, right? If it's fear, you feel the fear in the body. If it's anger, you feel the anger in the body. So when these emotions arise, what is actually there, if you look, is sensations in the body. That's what's actually there. And thoughts that come up in the mind, right? So you have thoughts and sensations. That's what's there. The thoughts are, if it's fear, they're fearful thoughts. If it's anger, they're angry thoughts. So you have thoughts and the sensation. That's what's actually there. Now, if you take me on and do that exercise with whatever you're feeling, what I'm asking you to see and notice is that when you look at that emotion, right, there is no person there. There's no person that's angry. If you look and you look at it, you can see there is no person that's angry. So if you believe there's a person that's angry, you're now in a dream. You're now dreaming that there's a person that's angry, because there is no person that's angry. This is the truth. This is not a theory. This is not some strategy. That's why this magazine says what it says, right? That's the basic teaching. No self, no suffering. So if you want to bring an end to suffering, you have to be receptive and open to these teachings. You have to study these teachings. You have to be highly motivated to do the practices and study these teachings, because without the proper motivation, you won't be able to do it. Because the programming that has your conditioning run is running all the time, right? So all you got to do is stop practicing and the program's back running. And you're back in the running program. You're back in the person. You're back in seeing from the eyes of the person. You're back in thinking as the person thinks. And like I said here earlier, you know, if you understand conceptually that you're not the thinker of your thoughts, that's not that hard. You know, we've gone over that here a lot of times. I bring that up a lot when there's new people here, because that's one of the most important things to recognize. And if you're new to this and you see that might shake you up a little bit. You know what I mean? that you've been living your life depending on the idea that you're the thinker of your thoughts, and I can spend 5 minutes pointing to the truth about that with you, and you'll see that can't possibly be true. It's just not possible for it to be true. And if you see that with your own eyes, if you see the evidence that there is no such thing as you thinking thoughts, then after that, you either have to forget you heard about that and just go back to be the way you were, or you have to begin a process of coming out of that dream. You have to begin a process of paying attention so you can say, okay, if I'm not the thinker of my thoughts, well, the first thing that's telling me is I better pay close attention to those thoughts. Because if I'm not thinking those thoughts, and those thoughts are not in my best interest, which they're not, not all of them, obviously, right? That's what makes it so confusing for people, right? Because they think, oh, wait a minute, you're telling me that thinking is wrong? No, I'm not telling you thinking is wrong. I'm saying that there are certain patterns of thought that have no function, because all those patterns of thought is the personality, right? Thinking about itself. And since there is no such thing as a personality, that's a waste of energy. It's a waste of energy. Okay? So if you see things as they are, the next thing you have to do is you have to begin practicing to come out of the condition that you find yourself in. Because the idea that you think you're thinking the thoughts is a condition you're in. It's a condition you're in. And that condition is so pervasive. That condition is has such momentum, right? Because you're doing it all the time, right? Has such momentum, and it's so ingrained, right, in the way you are, the way you operate, right? That you can sit here and hear what I'm saying when I say that you're not the thinker of your thoughts, and you can actually see it by doing a little bit of an inquiry, right? You can see it. It can't be true I'm the thinker of my thoughts, right? Because my thoughts are happening. I become aware of them after they happen. How could I have been the thinker of them, right? The evidence speaks for itself, right? But after you see that to be the case, that's not going to save your ass. Just to see the truth doesn't change anything, right? You can have a glimpse of it. You can have an experience of it. You can have a foretaste of it, right? And that does happen for people, right? But then they just forget about that and go back to sleep, right? Or they don't understand what it was and they think it was some kind of mystical experience, or they might even think something's wrong when something like that happens. But no, it's not something wrong. All that happens is once in a while, there's a crack in the egg. Once in a while, there's an opening, right? That the system that you are, for one reason or another, stops working just for a brief period of time. And when that happens, all of a sudden you see things the way they actually are. And it's a relief, and it's very profound, and people report, wow, I didn't have a care in the world. I felt happy. I felt like I won the lottery, but my circumstances didn't change at all. And then, of course, it comes to an end, and they go back underwater again, right? And then it's like, oh, I don't know what that was. What was that, right? But you see, those glimpses allow us to recognize there is something that is real that can be experienced, but it's not going to happen on its own, except for those brief moments, but that's not going to change your life, right? So what you have to do is you have to take on the condition, which means that you can hear and understand that you're not the thinker of your thoughts, and you can get it. You can see that that's true, right? But if you're going to be real, if you're going to be honest, right? When we get up and walk out of this room, you'll be right back into thinking that you're thinking the thoughts. Won't you? Don't you? That's very important to understand, right? That happens automatically, right? This is all automatic, right? It's a machine. It's like automatic. It's like a computer, right? And because it happens automatically, the only way you're going to get out of it is you got to pay attention consistently enough, right? That the way it's playing, right, stops being something that you're relating to. The way it's playing stops being something that you're relating to. How's it playing? It's playing like you're thinking the thoughts. Well, you have to practice not relating to it that way, right? And the times that it's most important to practice not relating to it that way is when you're upset, because that's when you make trouble, right? That's why I say, train yourself to notice when you're getting upset. Train yourself to notice. And when you notice when you're getting upset, Pay attention to the thought process. Pay attention to the emotional process. Pay attention to the physical sensations. And pay attention to the situation that you're in. If you pay attention to all of that, right, your actions will be wisdom-oriented. Your actions will come from the truth. If you pay attention to all of that, because why? If you're paying attention and you see that the thoughts are irrational, if you're paying attention, you can see that the emotion is an energetic push that has you want to say or do something, right? Because you're feeling threatened or whatever the case may be. But if you're paying attention and you're seeing all this, and you're also aware of the situation you're in, if the situation you're in is a situation where if you do what your mind is telling you to do, it's going to make it worse. If you're awake, you can see this. You can see it, especially in relationship to people that you live with, that you're close to, that you fight with. You have to fight with them after all, you know. You're living so close to one another that you're going to, you know, have conflict, right? But those are the perfect opportunities for you to pay attention in such a way that when the conflict occurs, if you watch and you don't lose consciousness and you stay attentive and you stay aware because you've been practicing and you've been practicing meditation, right? Right in the middle of the upset, right, you can see it as it really is. You're not lost in the upset. You see it as an upset. You see it as it really is. And because of that, and because you're aware of the circumstances, you can say or take an action that's actually appropriate, that will work, that won't create a fight, that won't keep you miserable, right? That won't keep you lost in the sauce, that won't keep you lost in these beliefs about the way things are that aren't true. So this is a process that takes time and commitment. It's an ongoing thing. You have to keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back, yeah. Yeah, when you try to think more about it, to come out with a better, it's all thought. That's why we're practicing not thinking, because thinking ain't going to work. It's not going to work. It'll do what it just did. It'll say, oh yeah, but how about this, right? Thinking is a hypothetical practice, right? Especially in relationship to this, right? People are always saying here, you hear it. Oh, well, what if this were to happen? Or how about this situation, right? So the mind will produce all these hypotheticals, right, to take issue with the truth. Yeah, that's, if you want to argue with the truth, good luck with that. It's not going to work. And even if you argue with the truth and you come up with a successful argument to the truth is still going to be true, and your argument's still not going to be true. And the truth is where the rubber meets the road. You can't live your life in a theoretical reality. You can't live your life in a hypothetical reality. You can only live your life in the real reality. That's where life happens, right? And that's why this works, because this is about reality. This is about what's real. This is about how when you are being real and you're relating to what is real, things work. That's pretty easy to see, right? Well, that's again what makes this a confusing reality for people, because thinking in and of itself is not bad. Thinking in and of itself is necessary and it's useful. But if you're paying attention to thinking and you know you're not doing the thinking, then you can start to sort it out. And you can start to sort out the crazy stuff from the useful stuff. That's why we talk about the working mind and the thinking mind. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with thinking. If you're paying attention to thinking, you'll notice when it's taking you to hell. That's a good thing to notice, right? And when it's taking you to hell, what do? You stop giving it your attention. It's like Muji says, thoughts will arise and they will audition for your attention. And if you give them your attention, they will play. They will play. The thoughts will play. And they will take your attention. And they will have you believe things that aren't true, because we live in a... Now why? This is why that happens. You'll believe things that aren't true because we live in a world where what is believed that's not true is considered to be true.
Say that again?
The reason that that we have these beliefs about who we are and about how things are, right, is because you were conditioned to have those beliefs. In the world we live in, we all share those beliefs and we all agree that those beliefs are true. So in the operational reality that we live in, they're not beliefs. The idea that you're a separate self in your physical body is not a belief in the world we share with other people. It's true, right? The idea that there is time is not a belief in the world that we share with other people. It's true. But everything that is true in that world is actually not really true. It's only true because we all agree that it's true, and we live our lives consistent with the belief that it's true, even though it's not. And that's the reason we suffer, even though it's not. And that's right. Happy to do it. Happy to do it. And the thing about it is, if you want to understand this belief, these beliefs about what's real and what's true that aren't real and what's true, they come out of the fundamental way that reality is understood, which is by agreement, isn't it? It's by agreement. The reality we share is based on agreement. A piece of paper with a picture of Washington is worth something, just because we agree that it is, that's all. Other than that, it's not. A certain rock that comes from deep in the earth, right, is very, very valuable. Is it really? No, it's not really. We just agree that it is. And we'll make it more valuable by making sure there's less of them available, because that makes it more valuable, right? Anything that there's less of available makes that thing more valuable, right? But that's only by agreement, you know? We agree that that everything is the way it is, right? See, we're not aware of that. When you were a little kid, you were given this conditioning a little bit at a time, right? Until it built up the whole thing, right? And once it built up the whole thing, it's like, oh, now it's real. Now time is real. Now the world is real, right? When you were a little child and you were given it a little at a time, it was only partially real. You were still living as a child in a lot of the direct experience of reality, right? But gradually you entered the insanity. Gradually you took on all of the beliefs and all the agreements about what's real and what's true, including the beliefs about you, the beliefs about time, the beliefs about other people, the beliefs about money, the beliefs about politics, the beliefs about health, right? All of it. That's called education. Unfortunately, the education that we receive leaves out the truth. The truth is not necessarily that important, especially if you're going into politics. It really isn't. The truth is not that important in the world we live in. That's why we have the mess we're in right now, right, with social media, right? Because all the candidate had to do to bring into question what's real and what's true is to say, oh, that's not true. Well, they said that you had sex with a prostitute. Oh, that's not true. Just say that's not true. And then we'll label that fake news, right? Now nobody knows what the hell's true anymore, right? That's one of the problems we're living with right now. Nobody really knows what's true. Certain people believe certain things are true that certain leaders said were true. Other people believe other things are true that other leaders said are true. This is a very dangerous situation. It's a very dangerous situation. Yeah, so I hope that because the situation is causing so much more suffering than has existed in the past, that it might lead to people considering another possibility and waking up. And that's why I think meditation and Buddhism and all this stuff is popular, but it's got to go beyond just being a fad. You know what I mean? It's got to be understood that this stuff is essential for well-being. Just like Richie Davidson's saying, well-being is a practice. What he's saying is well-being is a practice. It means anybody can experience well-being. There are certain practices that you need to do in order to do that, but you can do those practices. And that's what meditation is. It's a practice that produces well-being. If you do it consistently over time, and if along with doing it, you keep learning and understanding on deeper and deeper level about how all this works, and you put it all together and you practice meditation, and you can come to a point where you're awake. And once you're awake and you see things as they are, you won't be tricked anymore. You won't be fooled anymore. And you'll have access to reality and to being happy.